We are all built by our life stories, but sometimes the stories we tell ourselves aren't true, kind, or accurate. With the right mindset, we can transform them into stories that inspire and uplift, especially in tough times. At STORYBILT, we uncover the strength and beauty that can arise from adversity. Join us as we explore the lives of guests from all walks of life. Discover why the world is STORYBILT.
What's going on? Rose Lord is on the podcast today. This is the STORYBILT podcast, BILT, because that's how we spell it. But excited to have Rose on the podcast today in today's episode. Giving you a quick bio, Rose has her own dyslexic story to tell of how she overcame her challenges and went on to hold 2 British titles for rhythmic gymnastics and carved out a successful career in working with blue chip organizations and has founded several of her own startup ventures. From being unable to read and written off to contributing to the co-authored 4th edition of Woman Who Business book, which celebrated International Women's Day in 2021. I kind of butchered that at the very end, and I think maybe it's because I can't read well. But Rose Lord has done amazing things. And I'm so pumped to have you on the podcast today. I remember seeing you on LinkedIn, a comment you had mentioned, and I'm like, man, she's pretty in it. You know, I remember being like, oh, I need to connect with Rose, and you've been so awesome to be able to jump on and chat with me for a few minutes today. So I appreciate it. How you doing, Rose?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you so much for the very kind introduction there. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my story. I always think if you can share your story with one person and it impact them, then that's a good step forward in change as to what's needed across the globe.
Yeah, and how crazy is this? You're in England, right? I'm out here in Utah. Is that right? You're in Bedford? Is that?
I am in Barford. Yeah, it's a small little village just outside of Warwick, so not far from Shakespeare's country as well. So not far from Stratford-on-Avon. Any listeners who are Shakespearean fans?
That's awesome. Yeah, I googled it and I was like, man, that's a tiny little village. You know, it's like a couple thousand people. So, but it looked gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, small. Oh, yeah, no, it's a lovely place. We love living here. It's very nice.
Village life.
Village life.
I need to get out there, man. No, that's awesome. And you've done, I mean, when you going back to your comment about having an impact on at least one person even, right? I feel like with your story today, it's going to be very fun for the listeners to be able to understand and just understand, you know, that there's a path, there's a way, no matter how old or young we are, we can always improve our cognitive abilities. We can always enhance, you know, our skill set. It's never too late. And I've had podcasts so far, and even just off recording conversations where it's kind of sad, Rose, because there's some people that still feel like they're just, I'm dyslexic, and that's just what it is, and it sucks, and it's a big disability, but I get through it. You know what I mean? But it's the attitude, the mindset isn't. I'm like, no, man. I had a conversation with a guy. I'm like, no, dude, it's a good thing, you know, like if you have the right perspective. So with your story and your background, I'm excited.
And it doesn't have to be that way, you know, you don't have to just accept and live with the limitations as I've learnt and managed to change, and I've been lucky to do that. So I'm really pleased to be able to share my story in the hope that it will inspire others and change that. Sometimes we do have a fixed mindset, but to actually go into a growth mindset and think, no, I can do this and I will do this.
Let's dive in. So who is Rose Lord? Like where were you raised? What was childhood like? Family atmosphere, what was all that like?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm now a mum of two young children, but I grew up in a family of four siblings. So I'm one of four siblings. I'm the youngest of four siblings, and only me in my family has dyslexia, which actually is very hard growing up with three other siblings who don't suffer from the same binding limitations that you do through school life. So I was very well supported by my family, wonderful family. My mum and dad are tremendous people who have been real cheerleaders for me over the years and really supported me in finding other routes to express myself and find my other strengths that academia wasn't a strength. So growing up was at times lonely, because you feel that you're the only one in a family that is surrounded by very clever people that are now, my sister's a pharmacist, my sister at the time was going to law school, and my brother an avid historian and very switched on and what was deemed as clever. And intelligence is measured in many different ways, as we know. So I was actually born. I was actually born Rose Meredith. In fact, Caroline Rose Meredith, and changed my name when I sort of rediscovered an identity. Everyone always called me Rose, so I actually changed my name at 23 or 24 to Rose, rather than Caroline, that nobody called me. But I think just going back to those feelings of what childhood was like, that I was actually diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 7. My parents were both teachers at the time. So my mum was a deputy head of a school, and in a primary school setting, and she absolutely adored her job, and she was a wonderful teacher. So she recognised then early on that I wasn't quite the same as her other children that she'd had, and that there were some difficulties there. So they got a dyslexia diagnosis for me very early. Not everybody has that opportunity, and not everybody sort of gets that label, but the label for me, I don't think it was positive, of course, in the sense that people recognised that I couldn't do that and I couldn't do that, and I'm going to find that hard and I'm going to find that hard. And I think over the period of growing up, particularly in those forming years of being at school, that actually has quite a significant psychological effect on who we become and what we believe we're capable of and what we believe we can and can't do. Well, you can't do that because you can't do this, and you don't know the 9 times table because you can't retain any information. All of these things that the pain and the I sort of said this to somebody yesterday, is almost like a feeling of disgust in yourself that you can't read in the same way that your peers can. And I recall that feeling as though it was yesterday very often. And it's that pain, I think, when we feel that level of pain, change has to happen, and we have to find that point of change for other children that are still going through that day to day, every day, even now. We're decades on from when I was at school. I'm 39 this year, and there isn't enough change during that period of time, and that's why I've become so passionate about helping really to form change. Very passionate about the brain, how the brain works. So yeah, growing up was a lonely place. As much as I had a really lovely and supportive family, you still don't feel understood. Nobody really can understand that pain unless they've lived it themselves. And that's what made it very difficult, I think, because I was surrounded by people that were high flyers. And I do recall it. One of my aunts once said to me, "It must be really hard for you coming from such an academic family." And
Jeez.
a part of my heart
Man, yeah,
utterly sank.
that's horrible.
I was
Oh,
yes, but I soon found that I did have a strength. I was very good at ballet, and I progressed very quickly through my exams as a ballerina. And I actually auditioned for the Royal Ballet when I was probably about 10 years old, and I'm quite tall. So that wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. So I got to the final stage and I was rejected. So I experienced severe rejection at the age of 10, which is quite character building. And I wasn't really expecting that, because, I'd got distinctions in all my ballet exams, and I thought, yes, I'm going to be a ballerina for the Royal Ballet. And then when that rejection happened, I thought, well, I'm not bothered about doing this anymore. I don't want to be just mediocre at something. It had to be good or nothing. I think that had been instilled from just the way in which my family were about academia. I don't know to this day really, but that drive is still there in the other things that I do. And so I transitioned then into, well, actually it was an opportunity my mum had found to be a rhythmic gymnast. So rhythmic gymnastics is very much like ballet, but with apparatus. And so you throw things up and you do some smart moves underneath, and you catch your apparatus, and you make a lovely dance over it. And so I was very early spotted. Probably I'd only been doing it 9 months or so, and was spotted by the national squad and invited to come along to a training session for the Great Britain national squad at the age of 12. And then from there on in, I sort of spent every weekend there. And instead of going on family holidays, I would attend the national squad for a month on end whilst my family were in France. And I competed at international competitions, and through the development of my story, which I'll explain as we go through, I went from number 10 in the country to number 4 in the country through the transition that I went through with my brain. And won a number of British titles, as you mentioned. And a captain of our team that won the British gold for group championships. So it was an amazing experience. I think it certainly kept me out of trouble, as those forming years do, sort of 13 to 16 really. So after I'd achieved becoming number 4 in the country, I did move on, but and at 15, so where my I guess my dyslexia journey had taken me was from completely not really being able to read. Of course, when it's in a singular line and you've got a singular word, I could do that, but I do recall many occasion with working with my mum trying to get me to read, and her using the phonetic alphabet of k, at, and I've got k, at, and then blend it together. No idea. No idea. And she was such a patient lady, bless her. She spent hours trying to get me to blend words, and for the capability just unfortunately wasn't there, which is quite amazing. So I progressed through school life, scraping by. I was just there, I think is fair to say. I went to school, I turned up, I retained nothing really from the start of school when you're 5. So I'm a September baby, so I'd have been 5 pretty much, to the point of almost leaving school at 15 with GCSEs, where I was predicted 1 GCSE in art. I was very, very lucky to have been introduced to a concept, a very, very new pioneering concept at the time, 23 years ago now. And it was an approach that is now known as Zing performance, but it was very, very new then and called something else. It was founded by a wonderful gentleman called Winford Dorr, who has served over the last 20 odd years as an incredible mentor for me, and somebody that has always been my cheerleader from the point of getting to know him. And the reason that the program came about was actually through his own daughter's experience, and sadly trying to take her own life as a result of having a learning difficulty. She is most wonderfully still obviously with us, but his passion and his drive for change has been through her ill experience, and so he crafted out an exercise-based program, discovered that the cerebellum, the part of the brain, the back of the cerebrum, is responsible really for our skills development. And he working with expert neurologists, and one of which he still works very closely with, Rod Nicholson, here in the UK. They developed a program that would stimulate the cerebellum part of the brain, where there is a weakness in connections, but also challenges the vestibular part of the brain. And that then builds, they found through research that then builds stem cells in the brain that actually makes these connections and makes learning possible. So through going through this program, which is typically now 3 months, people see significant change within 3 months of doing 10 minutes of exercises a day, which is, feels like quite a simple way of putting an end to those quite frankly, soul-destroying limitations that a neurodiverse condition can put in the way. And as I went through this program, there were points of it where I will never forget the feeling that it gave. And as I explained earlier, I retained nothing. I had a friend who became a primary school teacher as we ended up coming out and graduating, and wonderful friends. And she, this is quite a funny story really, but she would say, well, I'm teaching about Tutankhamun. Honestly, who's that? She said, well, didn't you learn that at primary school? Nothing. I literally retained nothing. So I had an awful lot of catching up to do in my brain. As I started to complete these exercises, just life just started to become easier. And there's a moment that I will never forget. It was almost like a light bulb had turned on in my mind, that suddenly I'd been at school, I'd done some science, we'd had a science lesson, and I was completing my homework after I'd been training for 3 hours that night. And homework time for me was always a bit of a nightmare, because I'd come home from school, rush out the door, go training for 3 hours, come home, then I'd have to do my homework, and all of that great stuff that comes with being a kid. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, oh, I know the answer. And that was just a huge turning point in the path that then led to where I am now, and this realization that I can learn.
That was,
and I had never
15.
15. So I was doing my GCSEs at the time.
Wow.
And I must have been near year 10, I suppose, in the UK here. And I thought, Mum, I know the answer. And I just, the feeling that I had was like, wow, I've remembered something that I learned earlier today. And that that's how my dyslexia affected me the most. Probably was processing was very slow, and recall was very slow. I mean, I'll never forget a few times that somebody would ring up the house and try and leave a message for my mum or dad, and can you just take down my phone number? And there I am trying to and the phone number that the processing method that I had just didn't exist, and they'd be saying numbers on the phone and I'm writing down completely different numbers, and so I don't this is a phone number, darling. And I'll have to give her a call back, and things like that just started to happen naturally. I could put pen to paper when it was, and and it was an amazing enrichment of life that actually things started to become possible. And I don't personally remember this, but I do a few months ago when my daughter was going through this program, and I was saying, Dad, things are changing for Lydia, etc. And he said, well, I remember when you started reading physics books, and I came in one night and there you are with the lights still on reading physics books. And previously he'd come into my bedroom at night, and I had the I had the drive and the want to read, but I just found it such a struggle, and he'd find me sort of asleep with my head in my book, and tears strolling down my eyes because it was such a strain to follow the words in a book, and then to go from that to then read, actually reading a physics book and taking in the facts. And certainly my mindset of like, I can't do this. I want to learn more. I suddenly had this thirst and desire to sort of better myself, really, and improve in so many ways. So I now love self-help books. I think they're marvelous, and I've read many. Power of focus and all sorts of wonderful things. So after I actually then ended up passing 8 of my GCSEs as a result of this program. So written off, expected to pass only 1. So I'm jumping around a little bit with my journey here, sense. But so after completing the program, that then gave me that opportunity, and I was predicted just 1 GCSE, and I passed all of them. And I may not have achieved an A, but I got a pass when no one was expecting me to pass any decent ones anyway, apart from not that art's not decent, that's the wrong thing to say. But, English, science, the boring stuff that they drum on about, and then I did A levels. I think I started almost every A level known to man, and then settled on doing English literature, would you believe? So a lot of reading. So passed all of my A levels too. And then I went on to graduate. I took a bit of a year out in between, but I did a degree in communications, and because I was just so amazed that I'd gone from not being able to read to doing a degree in communications, I decided that I would set myself a challenge. And my challenge was to try and get a first in my degree. Sadly, I missed out by just 2 points, but still not too shabby. So I did get a 2.
Is that what a first is? Okay.
Class is like anything above 70%. So if you get 70% or over, then you've got a first class honours degree. Wow. So I got a 2-1 honours degree, a Bachelor of Science, and so that then sort of gave me great opportunities, and because I was so grateful for the journey that I'd been on to that point in life, I then worked with Winford in the business that was then. The direction of the business has changed now, so it's an online, it's a desktop app that you use, so it's different. I was so grateful, and I wanted to help more and more people to overcome their struggles. And so I was sort of a community manager in that role, and that's what I did. I looked after those that were going through the program and supported them, but also raised awareness that the program was there in its existence. And it was a wonderful time, and we were changing the lives of so many people, which was fantastic. And for whatever reason, I thought, oh, gosh, well, this is wonderful. But I went traveling again because I felt like the world was my oyster then. And then after that, I was headhunted into Barclays Bank. In a marketing function, and into an internal communications manager role. And I thought, well, this could be interesting. You know, it's only been a few years since I've been able to read, but we'll give this a good old go. And I loved it. It was a great role. So I managed all of the internal communications for the Barclays business marketing function, and was writing sometimes quite difficult technical information into layman's terms. So you get a brief and out you go, and it was very fast paced and so on and so forth. So I did that, and then I was promoted, which was wonderful. So then I had a role which was a propositions manager. So I was actually overseeing all of our existing customer strategy. I mean, I was on a good growth path. I think I did that for about a year and a half, and then I was made redundant. So I took the opportunity to set up my own company, and for a period of time I was an image consultant. So I really loved the idea of having a personal shopping business, and that was my drive to get to working with people and making them happy and putting a smile on their face. And as things evolve, and I'm a real believer now in as another door opens, as it left ajar, you can walk into lots of different opportunities. And I ended up doing some really fulfilling work with the unemployed. So I was delivering workshops to them and teaching them about the importance of first impressions and what to wear during an interview, and the success of them getting jobs was really working out, which was wonderful. And I'm a real networker, so I like to build great connections with people. And I built a great connection with this gentleman, and he saw an opportunity for me then to combine my banking skills with my training delivery in workshops. And then I set up on my own, if you like, a sort of freelance on a freelance basis, training facilitation, and I then worked on a contracting basis with Lloyds Banking Group for 6 years, where I delivered their training and also wrote it. So I was designing their learning for their customer facing staff, and that was a great job, great role, where I'd sort of gone from just sort of doing the do, and then actually helping to manage other people. So my progression was certainly going in the right direction. And I had 2 children, and then I sort of took a bit of a sabbatical, and worked on another project of my own for a period of time. And then of course COVID happened. We're wonderful COVID. Not so much wonderful. And that was a difficult time, but that is when I realised that not enough change had happened for decades. And we had my little girl at home, homeschooling. My son was 3, and it was chaos. And the chaos that we felt at home, I thought about all of those other parents that were also going through the same challenges, and that I wondered just how much had changed in their schools, and just how much was going on to support children these days that were neurodiverse. I only knew one school, and it was the ones where my children were. And that's really when I like to call it coming out. I came out about my dyslexia. I'd lived in denial about it, sort of packaged it away for many, many years. But during that time when we were all at home, was a time where I really felt like I wanted to start changing things. And I identified that there are some amazing people that are doing some really wonderful things for change and building awareness and making sure that children are getting screened earlier, and the wonderful work of people like Kate Griggs with her Made by Dyslexia charity and all the wonderful work that she does. And Darren Clark, again, is a fantastic advocate and going all around the country. That's just to name a few, but there were some amazing things happening. And I thought, I need to be part of this. Like, I want to be part of this because I feel like I have an important story, really, that I have overcome those challenges. And it wasn't until I did that program. I mean, having a primary school teacher, a deputy head primary school teacher as your mum, believe me, she tried everything, the coloured filters, the this, the that. We went to the Birmingham Children's Hospital, the eye hospital, to try and strengthen my eyes. There was everything that we tried, additional help, it was there on tap through my mum, but none of it worked. None of it. And that's what concerns me, I think, is that, we can all do the most wonderful job of building awareness. Let's screen for these children. Let's put them in a box and give them a label. Yes, I think that's an important thing to do, but do we all want to be labelled at 7 years old and then made to feel that you are different from your friends? Because unfortunately that can be the reality. I'm not saying it's the reality for every child, because it isn't. Some children are very proud to wear, let's put it inverted commas, so a badge, and that didn't work for me. It made me feel alienated, made me feel lonely, it made me feel like I was beyond stupid, and didn't fit in. And I didn't want to feel like that. I wanted to feel like I did fit in. And all I ever remember doing was lying, crying, as a young child in my mum's arms, saying, I just want to be normal. And it was that feeling of being normal. And I realise now as an adult, and I've gone through this journey and I've gone through this experience of huge change. Looking back to who I was as a child, I am not that person anymore, and I do see the world as my oyster, whereas before I just felt like a beaten down, opportunityless individual. I think is fair to say, but I realise now to the point that probably normal doesn't really exist. We are our own form of normal, and we can only be the best of our own best. We should never compete against each other. We are our own competition, and I'm a firm believer in that, because I don't think we are our own competition, and as long as we're doing better than we did before, then that's the important thing.
It's teaching the kids that confidence, right? So, like, to have that confidence in themselves, because unfortunately we have those scenarios, the school systems, just how it is today, where the normal is sometimes not, what we want it to be or who we are. And so that's where that stress comes in. I think it's absolutely unbelievable how, well, like, as you had mentioned, with your mom being such a huge support, your dad, but taking you through every single journey and path to be able to solve the issue, right, and help you improve your reading and your attention and your processing. But it didn't work until Zing, right? Until the really awesome study that you were a part of and kind of helped pioneer. As I think you had mentioned in LinkedIn, but guinea pigs, right? But and so I think that's really interesting. I mean, for because even if it would have been like 5 years later, right? Like your life could have been so different from what it is today, right? Like if you would have found it more as a young adult, but you had missed out those prime years to be able to excel and actually get your 8, tests. I think they said 1, but you hit all 8, right? And then getting your A's, because that's how I know it, right? Getting good grades, right? Which is huge. So it really truly is like a testament to having early awareness and being able to work on it. Because honestly, I was telling you before we clicked record here, but with my little daughter, she is 6, and she has her reading test today where she has to read a book. It's got to be at least 5 to 7 minutes in front of the whole class just by herself. And that's a scary thing. She is so nervous, but it's funny the way, not funny, but it's really, I love this setting because I'm learning so much. Because you had mentioned how your mom would sit down with you and sound it out and, really, try to make you understand. We do that with my daughter. I need to be more patient because like I went through that as a kid. I still feel like I go through it. But that's really interesting. So I want to unpack a few things. So one, as a kid, I feel like I've seen it a lot just from different stories. Whether it's dyslexia or any other learning difference or any other struggle, people choose to, the fight or flight, right? I'm going to fight, I'm going to run, I'm going to hide. For me, it was like, I'm just going to be a goofy kid and make fun of myself so other people don't, or they can kind of join along with me. Right. I was that class clown. What was Rose as a young girl growing up? What did you do?
Yeah.
Did you get picked on a lot? Was it like,
So
was it a scenario like that? Or was it more of just,
yeah, there's certainly times of that. But I think because of my sport, that gave me something huge to hide behind. And whether I was hiding behind it or whether that just masked a lot of my issues, it was it's something I was good at. So that gave me confidence in other areas. And probably I had more friends than I probably would have done if I wasn't an international rhythmic gymnast for those periods, and I think that my school were brilliant in supporting my sport, actually, and that's why I only did 8 GCSEs rather than 9. So everybody else in my school did 9 GCSEs, and I mean, I started rhythmic gymnastics when I was 10, so I was in my last year of primary school, and that's when things were noticeably getting pretty tough for my education journey, and it gave me a huge distraction that I am good at this, and that doesn't matter because I'm focused on being as the best I can be in my sport. And I think for anybody that has dyslexia and other neurodiverse conditions, but particularly dyslexia, is something that I've noted in a lot of us, is that we're very tenacious. We do not give up. If we've committed to something, we will do it. And I very much am like that now. The same characteristic that I had as a very young child. My mum remembers me sweeping up leaves in the garden. I must have only been about 5, and I just spent 2 hours wrapping up her leaves. And if I'm committed to a task, I do it properly. It's no half measures. It is getting it done to the very best that I can do something. And I think that is where the biggest frustration sometimes with having dyslexia can come in, because you can see in your head how things should be done, but actually getting your brain to do it is almost like it can feel debilitating and disabling. And I don't struggle with that anymore, which is just phenomenal.
I actually, Rose, I want to sorry to cut you off, because I also know that you're short on time. I would love to dive into that. Maybe we do this again. Maybe we have another session where we have you back on, because
Sure.
I'm interested with your experience with Zing and kind of some of those programs that you do, kind of the major impacts that you've seen. I mean, this is really interesting stuff. And I think for listeners out there, being able to understand and hear, like, you're telling me I can help my 6-year-old daughter not throw fits or not feel stupid, or,
Yeah.
because she can't read right now. So what is that like? And are you doing anything? I think you're kind of an advocate for them right now. What does that look like for you guys right now?
That's right. Yeah. So I'm an independent ambassador now for Zing performance, and that is through the experience of my own, but also the fact that my 8-year-old daughter has been hugely transformed through going through the experience too, and she was suffering terribly with anxiety as a result of COVID, and suspected that she may have, well, she certainly had autistic traits, so she had different difficulties to me. She's far more confident than I ever was. I wouldn't have said boo to a goose. I was terribly shy as a child, but she is much more confident than I am, and sometimes, without filter. But she has come such a long way. She was sort of tainted with the not motivated to learn brush. Just last year when she was in year 3 in the UK, and I thought, right, I'm not having my daughter go through the same pain that I did. And so we actually did the exercises for a second time. The first time for her, it got her reading, it got her out of the blocks, and she was reading for pleasure as a result of doing that. And the second time round, it just really brought her anxiety levels down enough so that she could actually enjoy the experience of going to school and not being on high alert. And as a result now, she's achieving mainly in all measures the expected standard, whereas she was only working towards before. And the one thing is spellings does come later, because it's building reading fluency and that sort of thing. But in my role as an independent ambassador for Zing, we're doing work with schools. We have trials in several schools happening at the moment, which I'm leading from that point of view. But typically, I see it my mission to share my story as much as I can, because I want to build awareness of the fact that change is possible. You do not have to live with the limitations that these neurodiverse conditions put in the way. And, we have amazing minds. The workplace is starting to recognise that actually neurodiverse people are well sought after, but imagine what they can do without their limitations. And I suffered a lot growing up, from the age of going to school to the point of being 15, and that shouldn't have to happen for children today. It just shouldn't have to happen. And the consequences of what went on for me as a youngster and into my adolescent years did leave scars, and emotional scars, that I'm not good enough and I can't do things, and some limiting beliefs. And I've had to build mental resilience to break through that. And if you're rejected enough times, you just I'll just pick myself up and carry on. It's just something that you become able to do. But there is a program out there that helps you do that, without having to really dig deep. And they have just very recently introduced an additional service to the program, which is absolutely phenomenal. And for anybody who does suffer from anxiety, which could be related to their neurodiverse condition, or it could just be that they've suffered some level of trauma in their life, could be financial stress, could be anything like that. They've built in a EMDR service into the program. And EMDR, for anybody that doesn't know, this listening, is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And It's recognised by the NHS. It's recognised worldwide by NICE as well, so the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, as a system that works to alleviate the stress from post-traumatic stress disorder and other traumatic conditions. They don't diagnose anything at all. It's nothing like that. But I've also been through that programme, and that has just completely lifted a fog that I've carried around. I probably would term it my dyslexic fog. The stuff that you bury deep, that you never really want to discuss again, the shame that you felt, or the bullying that you've endured, or anything like that. And as we go through life, we experience more rejection or more stress, and this process just alleviates that stress through reprocessing your rise. And it's
Really,
I couldn't recommend it enough for people that are struggling with stress. So there are a number of different offerings now that Zing offers, and I'm very passionate about the changes that they have made to my life and the opportunities that they've given. And I think wherever we feel pain, there is room for change, and wherever we feel misery, there is room for happiness. And everybody deserves to be living a happier, more stress-free life. We've got enough burdens to endure, haven't we, as humans in society at the moment? And if we can relieve some of that, then that needs to be shared with as many people
I love that.
as
That is
possible.
beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting questions around EMDR, around everything that you guys are doing over there at Zing. And I seriously, I'm gonna look more into this, and we'll have to talk offline. And then, like I said, would love to have you on again to maybe dive in a little bit deeper, because you are absolutely right. I mean, if there's a huge difference if you can have an impact on young children at an early age versus, I mean, really, right? Every month counts. Every year wasted could lead a young person down a very wrong, bad road. The very first guest that I had on this podcast,
Absolutely.
my boy Ed, he was an Uber driver, and we were chatting. That's how I met him. And he's still trying to figure it out, and he's in his 30s, and he's had a real rough go. And for people like you, like me, where, we've been blessed. My parents weren't educators, but, they're very supportive, but they just were so frustrated. They did not know what was going on, and it would be hours and hours and hours of homework every single week, every single day, and getting kicked out of classes. But then my teachers loved me because I was kind, and I was working so hard, but they were just like, man, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing, But if there's some sort of intervention and something like this that Rose Lord is doing, to be able to get in touch with, these schools, like you had said, this is massive. That's beautiful. The awareness that you're doing today is truly having an impact on many, many people. So really appreciate it. I know you actually have to go pick up your young one, your little girl, from school.
Yes, always that time again, isn't it? Very
Yep. No rest.
No
You're
rest for the
picking your
wicked,
daughter up,
as they
and I
say.
literally will take my daughters to school in the next 10 minutes. So that's going to be great. But anyway, Rose, you are awesome. You're phenomenal. Any last thoughts that you would like to say that you feel like you haven't gotten out?
Just that change is possible. I think we probably have already said it, but there is a way in which you don't have to suffer with the limitations that are there, and it's a skill thing, particularly with reading. Dyslexics don't have the skill to track words on a page, and what the program does is to give you that skill. And imagine your world with all the strengths that you have as a dyslexic, but your limitations gone, what you could actually be capable of. And that's the important thing, is there is so much potential out there, and it's just a case of unlocking it.
Well, thank you, Rose. Thank you for being on here. And
Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're
it's
awesome.
Wonderful
This is gonna be
talking
fun
to you.
to follow you and to watch what you're doing. So appreciate you. Okay, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. Okay, Rose. I think that's
perfect.
So I'll just go in here and we'll stop it at 49:10 or whatever it was. But man, I have so many questions.
Okay.
And I think Rose Lord should be like a 2-hour podcast.
Wow. I think people might get a bit bored of me. We should have Winford's a very interesting chap, and he's doing a few of these podcasts with people, and I mean we've got a number of I'm sort of trying to web myself out a bit at the moment, and there's a lady who is talking to Parliament here in the UK, and she is doing our program at the moment, and she's just had her first EMDR. She's got ADHD, and she's absolutely loving it, like how much clarity it's giving her, and it's just slowing her brain right down. And so she's
ADD or ADHD to the max as a kid. Yeah. And so that was, I mean, squirrel moments left and right, you know, but,
but Zing also works with Ned Hallowell, so you'll be maybe familiar with Ned Hallowell. He's like the world renowned, particularly in the US, for ADHD.
Cool.
Yeah. So he features Zing in his books. So we're able to offer a self-diagnosis tool. It's not an official diagnosis, but is partnered with Ned Hallowell, and together they have created a diagnosis tool which includes all of the official questions for a diagnosis. So it is a self-diagnosis tool if people are worrying and thinking that might have it, and on the two-year wait list that exists.
All right, well, that's
so yeah, there's a lot of wonderful stuff happening. I mean, Winford is incredibly passionate, and he just wants every kid and every adult who's suffered to. There's almost there's the future generation, but there's also the lost generation. Sure. And
that's cool.
That's who we want to help.
You're full of all these like awesome one-liners. I love that. Like for real. I was trying to write everything down. I'm like, man, so I just write it like timestamp 42 minutes or 37 minutes. That was a cool thing she said. So awesome, Rose. I know you got to go. I appreciate you. You are awesome.
Same here.
No, is it raining?
Yeah, wonderful. I have to go.